Hi, I'm Jessica, the branch director at the Trow Memorial Library, and I will be reading the story, The Sioux Who Married the Crow Chief's Daughter, from Myths and Legends of the Sioux. A war party of 7 young men, seeing a lone teepee standing on the edge of a heavy belt of timber, stopped and waited for darkness in order to send one of their scouts ahead to ascertain whether the camp which they had seen was the camp of friend or enemy. When darkness had settled down on them and they felt secure in not being detected, they chose one of their scouts to go in alone and find out what would be the best direction for them to advance upon the camp, should it be proven to be an enemy. Among the scouts was one who was noted for his bravery, and many were the brave acts he had performed. His name was Big Eagle. This man they selected to go to the lone camp and obtain the information for which they were waiting. Big Eagle was told to look carefully over the ground and select the best direction from which they should make the attack. The other 6 would await his return. He started on his mission, being careful not to make any noise. He stealthily approached the camp. As he drew near to the tent, he was surprised to note the absence of any dogs, as these animals are always kept by the Sioux to notify the owners by their barking of the approach of anyone. He crawled up to the teepee door, and peeping through a small aperture, he saw 3 persons sitting inside. An elderly man and woman were sitting at the right of the fireplace, and a young woman at the seat of honor opposite the door. Big Eagle had been married, and his wife had died 5 winters previous to the time of this episode. He had never thought of marrying again, but when he looked upon this young woman, he thought he was looking upon the face of his dead wife. He removed his cartridge belts and knife, and placing them along with his rifle at the side of the tent, he at once boldly stepped inside the teepee, and going over to the man, extended his hand and shook first the man's hand, then the old woman's, and lastly the young woman's. Then he seated himself by the side of the girl, and thus they sat, no one speaking. Finally, Big Eagle made signs to the man, explaining as well as possible by signs that his wife had died long ago, and when he saw the girl, she so strongly resembled his dead wife that he wished to marry her, and he would go back to the enemy's camp and live with them if they would consent to the marriage of their daughter. The old man seemed to understand, and Big Eagle again made signs to him that a party were lying in wait just a short distance from his camp. Noiselessly, they brought in the horses, and taking down the tent, they at once moved off in the direction from whence they had come. The war party waited all night, and when the first rays of dawn disclosed to them the absence of the teepee, they at once concluded that Big Eagle had been discovered and killed, so they hurriedly started on their trail for home. In the meantime, the hunting party, for this it was that Big Eagle had joined, made very good time in putting a good distance between themselves and the war party. All day they traveled, and when evening came, they ascended a high hill, looking down into the valley on the other side. There stretched for 2 miles along the banks of a small stream an immense camp. The old man made signs for Big Eagle to remain while the 2 women with the 2 women where he was, until he could go to the camp and prepare them to receive an enemy into their village. The old man rode through the camp and drew up at the largest teepee in the village. Soon Big Eagle could see men gathering around the teepee. The crowd grew larger and larger until the whole village had assembled at the large teepee. Finally they dispersed, and catching their horses, mounted and advanced to the hill on which Big Eagle and the 2 women were waiting. They formed a circle around them, and slowly they returned to the village, singing and riding in a circle around them. When they arrived at the village, they advanced to the large teepee and motioned Big Eagle to the seat of honor in the teepee. In the village was a man who understood and spoke the Sioux language. He was sent for, and through him the oath of allegiance to the Crow tribe was taken by Big Eagle. This done, he was presented with the girl to wife, and also with many spotted ponies. Big Eagle lived with his wife among her people for 2 years, and during this time he joined in 4 different battles between his own people, the Sioux, and the Crow people, to whom his wife belonged. In no battle with his own people would he carry any weapons, only a long willow coup stick with which he struck the fallen Sioux. At the expiration of the 2 years, he concluded to pay a visit to his own tribe, and his father-in-law, being chief of high standing, at once had it heralded through the village that his son-in-law would visit his own people, and for them to show their goodwill and respect for him by bringing ponies for his son-in-law to take back to his people. Hearing this, the herds were all driven in, and all day long horses were brought to the tent of Big Eagle, and when he was ready to start on his homeward trip, 20 young men were elected to accompany him to within a safe distance of his village. The 20 young men drove the gift horses, amounting to 220 head, to within 1 day's journey of the village of Big Eagle, and fearing their safety from his people, Big Eagle sent them back to their own village. On his arrival at his home village, they received him as one returned from the dead, as they were sure that he had been killed the night he had been sent to reconnoiter the lone camp. There was great feasting and dancing in honor of his return, and the horses were distributed among the needy ones of the village. Remaining at his home village for a year, he one day made up his mind to return to his wife's people. A great many fancy robes, dresses, war bonnets, moccasins, and a great drove of horses were given him and his wife, and he bade farewell to his people for good, saying, "I will never return to you again, as I have decided to live the remainder of my days with my wife's people." On his arrival at the village of the Crows, he found his father-in-law at the point of death. A few days later, the old man died, and Big Eagle was appointed to fill the vacancy of chief made by the death of his father-in-law. Subsequently, he took part in battles against his own people, and in the third battle was killed on the field. Tenderly the Crow warriors bore him back to their camp, and great was the mourning in the Crow village for the brave man who always went into battle unarmed, save only the willow wand which he carried. Thus ended the career of one of the bravest of Sioux warriors who ever took the scalp of an enemy, and who, for the love of his dead wife, gave up home, parents, and friends to be killed on the field of battle by his own tribe.